Welcome back to United Daily Updates, your most trusted and reliable source for all Manchester United news. Hello everyone and welcome back to United Daily Updates, the YouTube channel that brings you the latest Manchester United news every single day without fail. If this is your first time watching one of our videos, please take a moment right now to hit that subscribe button and turn on your notification bell. We are building the biggest and most passionate community of Manchester United fans on YouTube. This is the place where we come together to discuss transfer news, match analysis, tactical discussions, player performances, and absolutely everything related to our beloved club. We are not just another football channel that throws random rumors at you for clicks and views. We are your most trusted and reliable source for accurate information and honest, intelligent conversation about Manchester United Football Club. Today we have some really interesting news that clears up a lot of confusion about a transfer that happened recently. You all remember when Alejandro Garnacho left Manchester United to join Chelsea late in the summer transfer window. Well, there have been various reports flying around about what actually happened behind the scenes during those negotiations between the two clubs. Some reports claimed that Chelsea offered certain players to Manchester United as part of the deal to try to reduce the cash they had to pay. But now transfer expert Fabrizio Romano, who is widely recognized as one of the most reliable and well-connected journalists in world football, has come out and clarified exactly what actually happened during those negotiations. And it turns out that some of the reports that were circulating were completely wrong and inaccurate. Let me ask you some important questions before we dive deep into this story together. Did you know that Chelsea actually tried to include other players in the Garnacho deal instead of just paying pure cash? Were you surprised and disappointed when Alejandro Garnacho left Manchester United to join Chelsea? Do you think Manchester United should have accepted some of the players that Chelsea offered instead of just taking the cash money? Would you have wanted players like Romeo Lavia or Christopher Nkunku at Old Trafford wearing the famous red shirt? Do you think Manchester United made the right decision overall by just taking the £40 million in cash? Should United have kept Garnacho instead of selling him in the first place? These are all really important questions that we need to discuss and explore together. Stay with me throughout this entire video because we are going to cover absolutely everything you need to know about this developing story. We will talk about what actually happened in the Garnacho negotiations between United and Chelsea. We will reveal which players Chelsea really offered to Manchester United. We will discuss why Manchester United rejected those player offers and insisted on cash only. We will debate whether United made the right decision. We will analyze what this tells us about how Manchester United are doing business in the transfer market now. And we will talk about why it is so important to follow reliable journalists like Fabrizio Romano who give us accurate information. This is going to be detailed, comprehensive and really informative, so get yourself comfortable. Maybe grab a drink or a snack, and let's dive into this fascinating story together. Understanding the background of the Alejandro Garnacho transfer to Chelsea. Before we talk about which specific players Chelsea offered to Manchester United and what Fabrizio Romano has now revealed, we first need to take a step back and understand the basic facts and background about the Alejandro Garnacho transfer itself. What actually happened? When exactly did this transfer happen? And most importantly, why did Manchester United decide to sell one of their young academy products to a direct rival? Alejandro Garnacho left Manchester United and joined Chelsea late in the summer transfer window. The deal was finally completed right at the very end of August when the transfer window was about to close. Manchester United received a total fee of £40 million for the young Argentine winger. And here is the really important detail that matters enormously when trying to understand why United sold him. That entire £40 million was classified as pure profit for Manchester United on their financial books. What exactly does pure profit mean and why does it matter so much? Let me explain this carefully because it is absolutely crucial for understanding the thinking behind why United sold Garnacho. Alejandro Garnacho came through Manchester United's famous academy system. He was developed and trained by the club from a very young age. Manchester United did not pay any transfer fee to sign him from another club. He was homegrown. So when Manchester United sell a homegrown player like Garnacho, every single pound they receive from that sale counts as pure profit on their financial books for financial fair play purposes. This financial aspect is absolutely crucial for understanding Manchester United's decision-making process. Football clubs these days have to be extremely careful about financial fair play rules and regulations. You cannot just spend unlimited amounts of money anymore without consequences. You have to carefully balance your financial books. You have to show that your spending is in line with your revenue. Selling academy players for good transfer fees is actually one of the very best ways to create additional room in your budget to then go and buy other players that you need. So Manchester United sold Alejandro Garnacho for a total of £40 million of pure profit. This substantial amount of money could then be used to help fund and finance other signings in different positions. It gave Manchester United significantly more flexibility and breathing room in the transfer market. From a purely financial accounting perspective, the deal made a lot of sense even if it was emotionally difficult and sad for many fans to see a promising young academy product leave the club. But the transfer process was definitely not straightforward or simple or quick. It did not happen overnight. The various reports at the time said that one of the main reasons the deal did not cross the finish line until the very end of August relates to lengthy negotiations between the two clubs. In other words, Manchester United and Chelsea spent quite a long time negotiating back and forth and discussing various different options and structures before they finally agreed on a straight cash deal of £40 million. This is where the story becomes really interesting and worth exploring in detail. What exactly were Manchester United and Chelsea negotiating about for such a long time? Why did it take until literally the last day of the transfer window to finally complete the deal? What different options and proposals were discussed? This is precisely what we are going to explore and uncover in this video. The original reports that came out about players being offered in the deal. After the Garnacho deal was finally completed and announced, various different reports started coming out in the media about what had happened during the negotiations between Manchester United and Chelsea. These reports claimed that Chelsea had offered certain players to Manchester United as part of the overall deal structure. One specific report that got a lot of attention came from ESPN, which is a major and generally respected sports news organization with reporters all over the world. This ESPN report claimed very specifically that Chelsea had offered two particular players to Manchester United during the Garnacho negotiations. The two players named in that report were Christopher Nkunku and Romeo Lavia. Both are quality players who could have been potentially interesting options for Manchester United. The idea and logic according to these reports was quite straightforward. Chelsea wanted to include one or possibly both of these players in the overall deal structure. If Manchester United had agreed to take one of the players being offered, it would have either completely eliminated the need for Chelsea to pay any cash transfer fee at all, or at the very least it would have significantly reduced the amount of money that Chelsea had to add on top. This kind of arrangement and negotiation tactic happens quite frequently in football transfers. Clubs will often offer players to each other as part of complicated negotiations. Sometimes these player swap deals work out really well and both clubs end up happy with the outcome. But other times, one club does not particularly want the players being offered and insists on receiving cash only instead. Let me tell you a bit about the two players that were reportedly offered according to the original ESPN report. Christopher Nkunku is a really talented 27-year-old French attacker who can play in multiple positions across the front line. He was playing for Chelsea at the time but was not getting as much game time and opportunities as he probably wanted or expected. He is technically excellent, he can score goals, he can create chances for teammates. On paper and based on his ability, he would have been quite an interesting and potentially useful option for Manchester United. Romeo Lavia is a 21-year-old Belgian international midfielder who primarily plays as a defensive midfielder. He was signed by Chelsea from Southampton for a reported fee of around £58 million, which is an enormous amount of money. He has absolutely huge potential and talent for the future, but has suffered terribly from repeated injuries ever since joining Chelsea. Again, on paper based purely on his talent and potential when fit, he is exactly the kind of young gifted midfielder that Manchester United desperately need. So according to these original reports from ESPN and others, Chelsea put both of these players on the table during the negotiations with Manchester United. But Manchester United apparently rejected both options and insisted firmly on receiving pure cash only instead. They did not want to complicate the deal with player exchanges. Many fans and journalists and pundits discussed and debated these reports extensively. Some people thought Manchester United were wrong and foolish to reject quality players like Nkunku and Lavia. Some people thought Manchester United made absolutely the right call by just taking the guaranteed cash money. It became quite a hot topic of debate and discussion in the football community and on social media. But now Fabrizio Romano, who is widely regarded as one of the most reliable and well-connected transfer journalists in world football, has come out and stated very clearly that at least one of those reports was actually completely wrong and inaccurate. Let's talk in detail about what Romano has now revealed and clarified. What Fabrizio Romano has actually revealed and clarified about the negotiations. Fabrizio Romano is genuinely one of the most reliable, trusted and well-connected transfer journalists in the entire world of football. When he speaks about transfers and what happened behind the scenes, people pay attention and listen carefully because he has built an incredible reputation over many years for having excellent sources at clubs all over Europe and for being accurate far more often than not. He has now come forward and clarified what actually happened in the Garnacho negotiations, and his version is quite different from what some of the earlier reports claimed. Romano was extremely clear, direct, and unambiguous in his statement. He said very explicitly that the claims and reports about Romeo Lavia being offered to Manchester United are completely wide of the mark. They are wrong. They are inaccurate. It simply did not happen according to his sources. Romano stated very clearly on his YouTube channel, and I'm going to paraphrase his words here to make sure I capture the meaning accurately, that his information from his sources is that Chelsea and Manchester United never ever discussed Romeo Lavia as part of the Garnacho deal. Not even once. According to the sources that Romano speaks to regularly, Chelsea actually genuinely trust Lavia as a player and believe strongly in his long-term potential. Yes, he has had several serious injuries, and that is obviously a significant problem that needs to be addressed. But Chelsea's medical staff and sports science team are working extremely hard to try to improve his physical condition and get him back to full fitness. They already did a fantastic job previously with Reece James, who had absolutely terrible recurring injury problems for a long time but is now in much better shape. The mission and goal now is to do the exact same thing with Romeo Lavia and get him fit and healthy. Romano went on to explain further that in terms of pure skills, development potential, and future prospects, Chelsea genuinely believes strongly in Lavia as a player. They invested an enormous amount of money in signing him from Southampton because they believe he can potentially be something really special in the future. So Chelsea completely and totally deny all of these claims and reports of offering Lavia to Manchester United as part of the Garnacho deal. According to Romano's sources, the negotiation between the two clubs was only ever about Garnacho. Romeo Lavia was never part of it at any stage. This is extremely important and significant information because it completely contradicts and goes against what was reported by ESPN and potentially other outlets. Now we as fans and observers have to make a decision about who we believe and trust more. Do we believe the ESPN report that claimed Lavia was offered? Or do we believe Fabrizio Romano, who has excellent sources and is saying it never happened? Personally, I trust Romano considerably more because he has built his entire professional reputation over many years on being accurate and reliable about transfers. His track record speaks for itself. But Romano did not stop there with his revelations. He went further and revealed something else that is really interesting and that most people did not know about. He said that there was actually a completely different player that Chelsea offered to Manchester United early in the negotiations that most people have not heard about. Romano revealed and disclosed that at the very beginning of the conversation and negotiations about Alejandro Garnacho, there was indeed a possibility and discussion for a young Chelsea winger named Tariq George to potentially be involved and included in the deal with Manchester United. But Romano emphasized and stressed that this was right at the very beginning of June, which was extremely early in the transfer window when things were just starting to be discussed. And ultimately absolutely nothing happened with that particular proposal. It went nowhere. In the end, it became a completely straight cash transfer for Garnacho with no players involved. So let me summarize clearly what Fabrizio Romano has revealed and clarified for everyone. Romeo Lavia was never offered to Manchester United and was never part of any swap deal conversations at any point. That report was simply wrong. Tariq George was offered very early in the negotiations back in June, but nothing came of that proposal and it was quickly dropped. And Romano interestingly did not specifically mention Christopher Nkunku when he was debunking and correcting the Lavia claims, which potentially suggests that maybe Nkunku actually was genuinely offered to United, but Romano chose not to comment specifically on that particular part of the story. Who exactly is Tariq George and why would Chelsea have offered him? Let's take some time to talk about Tariq George in detail because I am willing to bet that many of you watching this video have probably never heard of him before today. Who is he? What kind of player is he? What position does he play? And why would Chelsea have offered him to Manchester United as part of the Garnacho deal? Tariq George is 19 years old. He is a winger who came through Chelsea's extensive academy system. He is apparently quite highly rated by people at Chelsea who have worked with him and watched him develop. They think he has significant potential for the future. But the problem for him is that he has not managed to play many games for the Chelsea first team yet because there is absolutely enormous competition for places in the attacking positions. Chelsea have so many attacking players that it is really difficult for a young player to break through and get regular opportunities. This current season, despite getting only limited appearances and chances, Tariq George has already managed to score 3 goals. That is actually quite impressive for a young player who is not playing regularly and is mostly coming off the bench or playing in cup games. It shows that he does have quality and can make an impact when he is given chances. Chelsea's thinking and logic when offering George to United was probably quite simple and straightforward. They have so many attacking players and wingers at the club that George is realistically not going to get much game time or many opportunities in the foreseeable future. So why not try to offer him to Manchester United as part of the Garnacho deal? From Chelsea's perspective, it would have made a lot of sense. They would get a player they really wanted in Garnacho while simultaneously offloading a young player who is not getting opportunities and might be frustrated sitting on the bench. But Manchester United very clearly were not interested in this proposal at all. They rejected it. They said no thank you. Why would Manchester United reject what seems like a talented 19-year-old winger with potential? There could be several different reasons and explanations. First and most obviously, Manchester United probably did not rate Tariq George as highly as Chelsea themselves did. Maybe United scouts had watched him play multiple times and decided that he was not good enough for Manchester United standards or that he was not the right fit for what they needed. Second, Manchester United were probably thinking very carefully and strategically about pure profit for financial fair play purposes. If they had accepted Tariq George as part of the deal, the accounting and financial calculations would have been significantly more complicated. They would not have received the full £40 million of pure profit that they ultimately got. Taking cash only made the finances much cleaner, simpler, and more beneficial for FFP. Third, Manchester United already have several young wingers at the club or coming through their own academy system. They have Amad Diallo who is performing really well. They have others in the academy pipeline. Did they really need another young, relatively unproven winger who might not even be as good as the young wingers they already have at the club? So Manchester United said no thank you to Tariq George. This conversation and proposal happened very early in the negotiations back in June when things were just beginning. After United rejected that idea, it seems that Chelsea eventually realized and accepted that Manchester United only wanted pure cash and were not interested in any player exchanges. So eventually Chelsea agreed to pay the full £40 million in cash. Why the Romeo Lavia reports were almost certainly wrong and inaccurate. Let's think carefully and logically about why the reports claiming that Romeo Lavia was offered to Manchester United are almost certainly wrong and inaccurate. Fabrizio Romano is absolutely adamant and certain that it did not happen. So why did ESPN and potentially other media outlets report something that apparently was not true? Sometimes in football journalism and reporting, information gets confused or miscommunicated or sources turn out to not be completely reliable or accurate. Someone at one of the clubs might have heard that Chelsea offered a midfielder to United and then assumed or guessed that it must have been Lavia because he is the most obvious Chelsea midfielder who Manchester United might potentially want or need. But maybe it was not actually true at all. Or alternatively, maybe someone at Chelsea or Manchester United mentioned Romeo Lavia's name in passing during a casual conversation or discussion, and this somehow got misreported or misinterpreted as an actual formal offer when it was really just a throwaway comment or casual mention. The absolutely key point here is that Fabrizio Romano's sources are telling him very clearly and unambiguously that Romeo Lavia was never seriously discussed or offered as part of the Garnacho negotiations. And Romano's sources at top clubs are usually excellent and reliable. He has built his entire professional reputation over many years on being accurate and trustworthy. When he says something with confidence, you can usually believe it and trust it. Romano also took the time to explain Chelsea's thinking and perspective about Romeo Lavia, which actually makes a lot of logical sense when you think about it. Chelsea invested an absolutely enormous amount of money in signing Lavia from Southampton. The reported fee was around £58 million, which is a massive sum for any player. They clearly believe strongly that he can potentially be something really special in the future. Yes, he has unfortunately had significant injury problems since joining Chelsea, and that is obviously a major concern. But they are actively working hard on that issue and trying to get him fit and healthy. Why would they try to offload him and give up on him so quickly after investing so much money? It simply does not make logical sense from Chelsea's perspective. If Chelsea really believed deep down that Lavia was not going to work out for them and was not worth keeping, they would probably try to sell him for cash to another club to try to recoup at least some portion of their huge investment. They would not just casually offer him as a makeweight or sweetener in a deal for a winger. That is not how big clubs operate when they have invested massive money in a player. So the Romeo Lavia reports were almost certainly just wrong and inaccurate. These things do happen quite regularly in football journalism, unfortunately. Not every report that comes out is accurate or true. This is precisely why we desperately need reliable and trustworthy journalists like Fabrizio Romano to clarify things and set the record straight when false information is circulating. Was Christopher Nkunku actually offered to Manchester United? The really interesting and notable thing about Fabrizio Romano's statement and clarification is that he did not mention Christopher Nkunku at all when he was debunking and correcting the Romeo Lavia claims. He only specifically talked about Lavia being wrong and then revealed the Tariq George information. He did not say anything at all about Christopher Nkunku one way or the other. This omission is actually quite significant and potentially tells us something. If Christopher Nkunku had also not been offered to United, you would logically expect Romano to clearly say that as well while he was correcting the record. The fact that he deliberately did not mention Nkunku at all suggests and implies that maybe Nkunku actually was genuinely offered to Manchester United as part of the negotiations. This would actually make a lot of sense for several different reasons. Christopher Nkunku was not playing very much at Chelsea. He was not really fitting into their system or getting regular opportunities. Chelsea clearly wanted to move him on and sell him. In fact, they ended up selling Christopher Nkunku to AC Milan on the exact same day that Alejandro Garnacho officially joined Chelsea. The transfer fee paid by Milan was reported as €42 million, which works out to approximately £37 million. So Chelsea very clearly wanted and needed to move Christopher Nkunku on and get him off their books. It makes absolutely perfect logical sense that they might have tried to offer him to Manchester United as part of the Garnacho deal before they eventually ended up selling him to AC Milan instead. Would Christopher Nkunku have been a good signing for Manchester United? That is actually quite an interesting question to think about and debate. He is definitely talented and has quality. He can play in multiple different attacking positions across the front line. He has experience competing at the highest level in the Champions League. But he is also quite injury-prone, which is always a concern. And he was clearly struggling for form and confidence at Chelsea. It is genuinely not completely clear-cut whether Manchester United should have taken him as part of the deal or not. In the end, it does not really matter anymore because Manchester United rejected any and all player offers and just took the pure cash instead. But it is still interesting to think about and discuss what might have been if United had made a different decision. Why Manchester United rejected all the player offers and insisted on cash only. Let's talk in detail about why Manchester United rejected all of the player offers that Chelsea made and insisted firmly on receiving pure cash only instead. What was their thinking and reasoning? What factors influenced this important decision? The first and absolutely most important reason is financial fair play regulations and accounting. As I explained in detail earlier, selling a homegrown academy player for pure cash gives you that full amount counted as profit on your financial books. This is incredibly valuable and beneficial for FFP purposes. It gives you significant additional room and flexibility to spend money on other players that you want to sign. If Manchester United had accepted Tariq George or Christopher Nkunku or any other player in the deal, the accounting and financial calculations would have become significantly more complicated and less beneficial. The value of whatever player you receive counts as a cost on your books. So your pure profit from the sale is substantially reduced. Manchester United clearly wanted to absolutely maximize the financial fair play benefit of selling Alejandro Garnacho. The second major reason is that Manchester United probably did not rate any of the players being offered by Chelsea highly enough to justify complicating the deal. If Chelsea had offered someone truly special and exceptional, someone that Manchester United really desperately wanted, then maybe United would have seriously considered including a player in the deal. But Tariq George is an unproven 19-year-old teenager with no real track record. Christopher Nkunku was struggling badly for form and had injury concerns. Manchester United probably looked carefully at these options and thought, no thanks, we would much rather have the guaranteed cash and then buy players that we actually want and have specifically identified. The third reason is simplicity and reducing risk. Cash deals are clean, simple, and straightforward. You receive the money, you deposit it in your bank account, and then you can spend it however you want on whatever players you choose. Player swap deals are complicated and carry multiple risks. What if the player you receive does not work out at your club? What if he gets a serious injury? What if he does not want to come or cannot agree personal terms? Taking pure cash removes all of these various risks and complications. The fourth reason that probably played a role is wages and the overall wage bill. Both Christopher Nkunku and Tariq George would have been on wages if they joined Manchester United. Those wages count against your total wage bill, which clubs have to carefully manage. So Manchester United made what they clearly believed was a calculated and smart decision. Pure cash was significantly better for them financially and strategically than any of the players that Chelsea offered. It was a smart, sensible business decision, even if it might have been potentially interesting to receive a player like Christopher Nkunku who has undeniable quality when fit and in form. Was selling Alejandro Garnacho the right decision in the first place? This entire situation brings us to a much bigger and more important question that goes beyond just the negotiation details. Was selling Alejandro Garnacho to Chelsea actually the right decision in the first place? Should Manchester United have kept him instead of selling him to a direct rival? This is genuinely a controversial and divisive topic among Manchester United fans. Opinion is split. Some fans were absolutely furious and really angry when Garnacho was sold to Chelsea. He came through the famous United Academy system. He was exciting and fun to watch with his pace and skill. He had potential. Selling him to a direct rival felt like giving up on a talented young player way too early. But other fans completely understood the decision and the logic behind it. Garnacho was not playing regularly under the manager. He was clearly not in Ruben Amorim's immediate plans. He wanted to leave and get more playing time elsewhere. And £40 million of pure profit is an absolutely enormous amount of money that can be strategically used to improve multiple other areas of the squad that desperately need strengthening. From a purely financial and accounting perspective, the deal made a lot of sense for Manchester United. They desperately needed to sell homegrown academy players to create financial fair play room and flexibility. Garnacho wanted to leave and get more game time. Chelsea were willing to pay really good money. It ticked all the necessary boxes from a business perspective. From a sporting perspective, You can definitely debate it and people will have different opinions. Garnacho might well develop into a really good player at Chelsea over the next few years. Manchester United might end up regretting selling him if he becomes a star. But equally, he might not develop as much as people hope and expect. You simply never know with young players. Development is not linear or guaranteed. My personal view and opinion is that Manchester United probably made the right decision overall given their difficult financial constraints and the fact that Garnacho genuinely wanted to leave and get more opportunities. You absolutely cannot force players to stay at a club when they desperately want to go elsewhere. And the substantial money United received was extremely useful for their ongoing rebuilding project under the new manager. But only time will ultimately tell if it was actually the right call or not. If Alejandro Garnacho develops into a genuine superstar at Chelsea, then Manchester United will look foolish and will have made a mistake. If he struggles and does not develop as expected, then United will look smart and vindicated. We will have to wait and see what happens. What this situation tells us about Manchester United's current transfer strategy. This entire situation surrounding the Garnacho transfer and the player offers tells us quite a lot about how Manchester United are currently operating and making decisions in the transfer market. Let's carefully analyze what we can learn and understand. First, it clearly shows that Manchester United are being noticeably smarter and more strategic about financial fair play regulations. They fully understand the rules. They understand that selling academy players creates valuable pure profit. They are consciously using this to their advantage. This represents smart professional business management. Second, it shows that Manchester United are not just passively accepting any players that get offered to them anymore. In the past, during less successful periods, United might have been tempted to accept a player like Nkunku just because he has a big name and reputation. But now they are being significantly more strategic and disciplined. If a player does not fit what they specifically need or does not meet their standards, they firmly say no. This is much more professional. Third, it shows that Manchester United have a clear preference for cash over player swaps in most situations. Cash gives you maximum flexibility. You can spend it however you want on whoever you want. Player swaps are complicated, risky, and often do not work out well. United are taking the safer, simpler option that gives them more control. Fourth, it demonstrates that Manchester United are willing to sell promising young players if the price is right and the player wants to leave. They are not being overly sentimental or emotional. If selling an academy player significantly helps the bigger financial picture and overall rebuilding project, they will do it without hesitation. All of this points toward a more mature, professional, and strategic approach to operating in the transfer market. Manchester United are thinking more carefully. They are making smarter financial decisions. They are not being emotional or making impulsive knee-jerk decisions like they sometimes did in the past. Whether this more measured approach ultimately leads to success on the pitch remains to be seen. But from a pure business and financial management perspective, Manchester United are definitely doing things more intelligently and professionally than they have at various points in the recent past. The critical importance of reliable transfer information and trusted sources. This entire story also really highlights and demonstrates the absolutely critical importance of reliable transfer information and making sure you trust the right sources for your news. We had various reports claiming one thing. Then Fabrizio Romano comes out and clearly says that those reports were wrong and inaccurate. So who should we believe and trust? This is precisely why you desperately need to follow reliable and proven journalists like Fabrizio Romano. He has consistently proven over many years that his information is accurate and trustworthy. He has developed excellent sources and contacts at clubs all over Europe. When he says something with confidence, you can usually trust it and believe it is true. Compare that to random unverified reports on social media or from less reliable sources and websites. Literally anyone can make up a story or rumor. Anyone can claim they have inside information or sources. But unless they have a long-proven track record of being right consistently, you should be very skeptical and cautious about believing everything you read. This is also a big part of why United Daily Updates exists as a channel. We make a conscious effort to only share and discuss information from reliable proven sources. We try really hard to separate genuine facts from fiction and rumors. We try to give you accurate, trustworthy information so you can make properly informed judgments about what is really happening at Manchester United. There is genuinely so much misinformation floating around in football media and on social media these days. So many completely false rumors. So many made-up stories with no basis in reality. You absolutely need sources that you can trust to cut through all the noise and confusion. Fabrizio Romano is definitely one of those trustworthy sources. When he clearly states that Romeo Lavia was not offered, I personally believe him without hesitation. When he reveals that Tariq George was offered early on, I believe that too. His track record over many years speaks for itself and has earned our trust. Would Romeo Lavia actually have been good for Manchester United? Even though Romeo Lavia was apparently never actually offered to Manchester United according to Romano sources, it is still genuinely interesting and worthwhile to think about whether he would have been a good signing for Manchester United if he had actually been available as part of the deal. Romeo Lavia is 21 years old. He is a Belgian international player. He plays primarily as a defensive midfielder. He was signed by Chelsea from Southampton for a fee that was reported to be around £58 million. That is an absolutely enormous amount of money for such a young player with relatively limited experience. Lavia definitely has excellent technical ability. He is really good and comfortable on the ball. He can pass well both short and long. He reads the game intelligently. He has the profile and characteristics of a modern defensive midfielder who can both defend effectively and also contribute positively to build up play from deep. The absolutely massive problem and concern with Lavia is injuries. Since joining Chelsea, Lavia has been injured constantly and repeatedly. He has barely played any games at all. When you are injured all the time and cannot stay fit, it honestly does not matter how talented you are or how much potential you have. You simply cannot help the team if you are always in the treatment room receiving medical attention. So would Manchester United have wanted him if he had actually been offered? It is genuinely complicated to answer. On one hand, his profile and playing style fits quite well with what Manchester United desperately need in their midfield. On the other hand, his injury record is an absolutely huge red flag that cannot be ignored. Manchester United have already had way too many problems with injury-prone players like Luke Shaw over the years. Do they really want to add yet another player who cannot stay fit and available? My personal view and opinion is that Manchester United probably would have been absolutely right to reject Romeo Lavia even if he had actually been offered. The injury concerns are just way too serious and worrying. Much better to take the guaranteed cash and then use it to sign a midfielder who can actually play regularly and stay fit. Would Christopher Nkunku have been a good signing for Manchester United? Let's also think carefully about Christopher Nkunku, even though it remains somewhat unclear whether he was actually officially offered to United or not based on Romano's comments. Christopher Nkunku is 27 years old. He is French. He is an attacking player who has the versatility to play as a winger, as a number 10, or even sometimes as a striker. He was absolutely brilliant and performing at a really high level at RB Leipzig in Germany before he joined Chelsea. But unfortunately at Chelsea things simply did not work out well for him at all. He really struggled for consistent form and for getting regular game time. Nkunku on his very best day is genuinely a very good quality player. He is technically excellent, he can score goals, he can create chances for his teammates. During his time at Leipzig he was regularly scoring and assisting in both the Bundesliga and the Champions League at a high level. But there are also several reasons to be quite cautious and concerned. He is 27 years old, so not particularly young anymore and probably approaching his peak years. He was clearly struggling at Chelsea, which naturally raises questions about whether he can still perform at the highest level. He has had various injury problems. And his wages are probably quite high, which would add to United's wage bill. Would he have genuinely improved Manchester United squad? Quite possibly yes. He would have added some quality and experience to the attacking options. But would he have been worth giving up some portion of the valuable Garnacho money for? Almost certainly not. Manchester United can probably find better and more suitable options with £40 million to spend in the market. So once again, I genuinely think Manchester United probably made the right call by rejecting any player offers and just taking the pure cash. The money gives them significantly more flexibility and many more options in terms of who they can target and sign. What actually happened to all the players involved after the window closed? Let's quickly discuss and update you on what actually happened to all of the players who were involved in this story after the summer transfer window finally closed at the end of August. Alejandro Garnacho obviously joined Chelsea, as we all know. He signed for them on the very last day of August. How has he actually done there so far? By most accounts his performances have been quite mixed. Some good games where he has shown his quality, and some quieter games where he has struggled to make an impact. He is still very young and adjusting to a new club and new teammates and a new system. Time will ultimately tell whether he becomes a real success at Chelsea or not. Christopher Nkunku was sold to AC Milan on the exact same day that Alejandro Garnacho officially joined Chelsea. The transfer fee was €42 million or approximately £37 million. So Chelsea basically got their money back more or less. Nkunku gets a fresh start and new opportunity in Italy. It probably works out reasonably well for everyone involved. Romeo Lavia stayed at Chelsea as Fabrizio Romano confirmed and explained. He is unfortunately still struggling with recurring injuries. Chelsea are genuinely trying really hard to help him, but it is clearly a very serious ongoing problem. Hopefully he can eventually get properly fit and healthy and show his undeniable quality eventually.